It's Matt Sager, and we continue to talk about the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League, something that fans have been clamoring for, and that Zack Snyder himself has been stoking the demand for 2.5 years now. It's weird, a lot of people seem to have the same hot take on the matter that an article in Comics Beat had last week that I discussed on this podcast. That being that this sets a dangerous precedent of studios caving to fan demands from toxic fans. And I think that's a weird take, to be completely honest. A lot of these writers, I'm fairly certain, remember fans demanding that Fox air Firefly or release it on DVD. That's a Joss Whedon property that in the early 2000s was launched and essentially sabotaged by Fox, murdered in its crib. And rabid fan demand, led to it being released on DVD, causing it to have a second life, a robust fandom, which continues to this day, and it, of course, even led to the movie Serenity. That was fan activism, and it worked. We were given something that Fox didn't want us to see. They didn't have faith that it was going to be any good. We'd enjoy it. And fans rose up. Without that happening, you wouldn't know what a brown coat is. Joss Whedon's career might not have had quite the upward trajectory it ended up having, because it was one more beloved feather in his cap, one more great property of his, one more example of what a great genre-bending genius he is. No one, I don't think, remembers that as toxic fandom, nor should they. Same thing happened with Community. People demanded that it return. That was a less successful demand, but none of these people were accused of being toxic fans. What really is going on is that Warner Brothers, AT&T, DC Comics, HBO Max, they're getting free market research. Entertainment companies actually want to know what fans think. And before the internet and these highly populated and vocal message groups, studios like this would pay for market research. They'd hire people off the street, give them $100 for an hour of their time, and say, hey, did you like the version of Justice League we put out in theaters? Do you think you'd prefer the Zack Snyder version? Okay, thank you for your time, and they get to work on it. Media is actually in the service of putting out content that people are interested in seeing. That's my take on this. Are there toxic fans? Sure. There's also toxic creators, toxic online journalists, a lot of dumb people to go around. That said, it really doesn't matter what I think or any other journalist thinks. Everyone's really up in arms about it, but the bottom line is it's happening. The Zack Snyder cut of Justice League is going to be released on HBO Max in 2021. If it's lame, no one's going to defend it, except maybe Zack Snyder. For HBO Max, the only precedent they're setting is new content that they know fans want that will help them get subscribers when they launch. That's really it. It's very simple. That said, the Snyder Cut does have its own IMDb page now. If the announcement of it didn't make it official, and if all the hysterical articles about the announcement didn't make it official, the IMDb page cements this thing as a reality. As with the actual Justice League page, for which Snyder was supplanted, ultimately replaced, and co-directed by Joss Whedon, on the Justice League page, Snyder is actually given sole directorial credit. That's also true, as you would think, of the Justice League Snyder Cut page. A difference between the Justice League original page and this new Snyder Cut page is that on this new page, only he and Chris Terrio are given credits for writing. On the original Justice League page, there's 11 writers featured, including Joss Whedon. So whatever Joss Whedon wrote, either it's been excised from this cut of Justice League or for whatever reason he's not being given credit. That said, a bunch of those writers probably will show up on the IMDb page as they continue editing, fine-tuning, and probably shooting some of this Snyder Cut of Justice League. So don't be surprised if a few more writers don't pop up. But as of now, it's only written by Zack Snyder and Chris Terrio per IMDb. As for the cast, all of the original cast members in the Justice League cut we've seen in theaters are included on this IMDb page. Ben Affleck as Batman, Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, Henry Cavill as Superman, Ray Fisher Cyborg, etc. There is one new addition that confirms many of the rumors we've been hearing about the Snyder Cut of Justice League. There's a new cast member credited, Ray Porter, as Darkseid. That's one of the big cuts that we have heard repeatedly from the version of Justice League which we got in theaters. The ultimate sort of mishmash, last-minute Snyder being replaced by Joss Whedon, and the two cuts of the film being sort of merged into one ugly bouillabaisse. One that I don't blame solely on Snyder, and I certainly don't blame solely on Whedon, who, look, he made Avengers Age of Ultron, he did Buffy, Firefly, Angel, Dollhouse. I don't think anyone is going to poo-poo Joss Whedon's talents here. I think they were poorly used. I think he was given a very limited amount of time, very limited amount of money and resources, and he was given a largely finished movie and told, save this. I hope that no one is blaming Joss Whedon for Justice League's ultimate failures. He was one piece out of many that contributed to a failed film. And again, we don't yet know that Snyder's Cut is going to be any better. Every Snyder DC movie I've seen, unless you're counting Watchmen, has been bad, right? I mean, he did Man of Steel, the conflicted, objectivist, nihilistic Superman who didn't care if people died as long as he won his fight with Zod. The ridiculous Batman vs. Superman based on a hokey premise featuring a clownish Lex Luthor played by Jesse Eisenberg. Batman as a ruthless, murdering scum. Again, Snyder's vision of DC Comics is at odds with comic book heroes. He's all about objectivism. He's not been good. So for me, the Snyder Cut is a curiosity. And I do believe it's going to be better than the version we saw in theaters simply because it has to be. And also because Snyder has now been given free reign to do reshoots, to rewrite some of his script that in hindsight was probably bad. He has the hindsight of what the DC Extended Universe has been doing since he dropped out of it after a terrible family tragedy toward the end of the Justice League production. He's seen the film universe go in lighter directions with Aquaman, Shazam. He's seen the ultimate cultural effect of less dark, more heroic movies like Wonder Woman have had. So he is poised, given a lot of advantages, to redeem his name, perhaps, and if nothing else, with all this ammunition in terms of information, hindsight, money, fan support, he could possibly redeem the Justice League movie, and whatever else he's going to do, he's going to bring new eyeballs to HBO Max. That's really the bottom line here. Toxic fandom be damned, and I would not describe these people as toxic. I think they're following in the footsteps of a long tradition of fans saying, hey, we want this. Why did you cancel it? Why did you fire this director? Why did you fire this cast member? Let's do mail-in campaigns. Let's ask people on social media. Let's get a thing going here. I really don't understand this, to be honest with you, this uproar. Bottom line is the Snyder Cut is coming, and if you want to follow its updates as it gets ready for production, if you want to find out, we still don't know whether this is going to be a 4-hour movie or a 6-part TV installment production. If you want to find out who gets additional writing credits, if anyone's added to the cast, production crew, etc., it's all there for you on imdb.com, so check it out there. Ray Fisher, meanwhile, the actor who played Cyborg, he is praising the Snyder Cut as, quote, the turnaround for 2020. He did an appearance on the Nicecast podcast, and speaking of the Snyder Cut announcement, he said it could be, quote, the turnaround for 2020. People need something to look forward and hope for. I'm going to have to agree with him there. This year has been dog shit. Wow. Whatever my plans for 2020 were, they did not involve a national pandemic, a global plague. People I know and love getting sick and dying. Any good news is very welcome here for all of us. Is Justice League the Snyder Cut going to be enough to make up for any of these losses? No. But any good news is very welcome at a time when there's precious little to go around. Fisher went on to describe the Snyder Cut as pure jubilation. This is nothing but good, he says. He also talked about the original arc for Cyborg, one of the many things that we did not see in the Justice League theatrical version. Cyborg, a pretty complicated character whose backstory is desperately important for the movie. Cyborg is not a hero by choice, really. He is someone who considers himself to be a bit of a monster. He was in a terrible accident caused by his father, his relationship with whom was already very tense and fraught, and now the two of them have to work together to save the world. And in every other iteration of Cyborg, this backstory is plumbed to its depths because it's really important to understanding his character, to make him something other than the metal robot guy. A MacGuffin who's able to merge with alien technology. Why? How? Who knows? Who cares? That's not how Cyborg is meant to be portrayed. Yes, he's a fictional character. If I sound a little bit passionate about it, it's because it's one of the reasons that the Justice League film was so terrible. Many of these characters were given no backstory, precious little in the way of introduction as to who they are and why we should care about them, or why they would join the Justice League to begin with. They were just there. It was a particularly unapologetic, trash action movie, designed clearly to just fit something into the production schedule on time hopefully sell some action figures and Happy Meals and t-shirts and move on. And that's lame. The moviegoers deserved more. The film deserved better. Ray Fisher certainly deserved better. He signed on to play a character, and that's not the one that we saw on screen. He talks about this original Cyborg arc, saying, quote, "Your body, you've lost your mother, you've lost your ability to play football, one of the defining things that you've established for yourself. You've lost a sense of yourself, and it's about finding that again, finding that humanity again." Yeah, see, a character arc. Imagine that. For a pivotal member of the Justice League, a guy who needs a reason to be risking his life, joining up with these other superheroes, being a superhero to begin with instead of playing football, hanging out with his girlfriend. Why he has to risk his life for Batman and Superman's dumb crusades. There are reasons for this. This was apparently covered in the original Snyder version of Justice League. If it wasn't shot, it was certainly in the script and in the production notes and in storyboards. That said, Fisher mentioned that he'd had the opportunity to view an early version of the Snyder Cut, probably the version that DC, AT&T, and HBO Max saw a couple weeks ago, leading right into the announcement that the Snyder Cut will be appearing on HBO Max. However, cue sad trombone, Fisher missed the screening. So he doesn't know how much of this is in the Snyder Cut now, how much of it will be added to and included in the final Snyder Cut, but he's clearly very excited. He's not shitting on Joss Whedon or the version of Justice League that we saw in theaters, but he's understandably excited for a better character arc for his character. I am too. Like Ray Fisher, we can all watch the Snyder Cut of Justice League in 2021 when it airs on HBO Max. And if anyone involved in this resuscitation of the Snyder Cut feels that they've been subject to a fan harassment campaign, that there's been some toxicity here, that there's been bullying or threats, I'd very much like to hear from you, because it seems to me that the media has taken a collective stance on this, that this isn't good news, that this isn't fans getting what they asked for, or a director and most of the cast of his movie getting what they've been clamoring for, that this is instead a studio buckling to the demands of a bunch of online bullies and even cyber terrorists. Several of the articles I read have actually decried fans for donating to charities to help prevent suicide. That is ultimately why Snyder had to step down as director of Justice League. There was a tragic suicide in his family. So one thing that fans of Snyder and the movie have done was donate to suicide prevention charities. And some of the articles are describing this as a weird sort of runaround harassment against the studios, as bad faith philanthropism. I don't think that the fans are that smart or that evil. I think that people who are sympathetic to Zack Snyder, among other things, understand that a suicide in your family is one of the worst things that can ever happen to you. And so they've donated to charities to help prevent it. It is one way in which they've sent their sympathies, their regrets. I don't think that's toxic. If it is, I really need an explainer on how and why. How is that bad? How is that toxic? How is that bullying? If you've ever dealt with a suicide in your life, please explain to me how that's bad that people could be reaching out to help prevent such a thing. Again, I'm not a Zack Snyder fan. I'm not at all certain that the Snyder Cut of Justice League will be great. I'm fairly sure it will be better than what we saw, but by how much, I don't know. I just don't think that Snyder, Ben Affleck, Gal Gadot, Ray Fisher, and the fans are some sort of cyber terrorists for asking for 2.5 years to see the original Snyder Cut of Justice League. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think everybody here is taking things way too seriously. If you feel differently, or if you've experienced this differently, by all means, please let me know. All my social media info will be included in this episode's description. And by the way, I'd love for you to follow me on social media regardless. Also, if you'd like to donate to this podcast, there's links as to how you can do that as well. If you're watching on YouTube, please do like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and share. Or if you're listening on a podcast network or app, please subscribe there, leave me reviews, ratings, etc. Thank you very much, and I'll talk with you soon.